the patient and your doctor. And in the end, we'll make the doctor of an employee, and I think this is something that's a take-home message, and I urge you to get a copy of that DVD and give to your family doctor and anybody else that's in the health professions, Obamacare 101, because it explains it so well, and get a copy of that New American issue, Obamacare, because your doctor will be an employee, and he's not going to realize this immediately, but the government will take over every practice and regulate everything that is the problem to begin with, the overregulation. My wife is a RN, BSN, master's in nursing, and she every day cannot believe, she scratches her head how much the government puts a wedge between the doctor and the patient. Again, it won't happen overnight. It'll be a gradual process. The erosion of the doctor-patient relationship begins with Obamacare setting up an medical information bank that all of your data will go into, which your personal and medical history becomes a government-driven database. Just the mere creation of such a system broadens the possibility of your privacy becoming public. In the sense that the government is public, your data now will be a part of a public domain, not confined to you and your doctor. We can be given all sorts of assurances and safeguards and understanding that another government agency with all this information won't share it. But by the way, did you know there's 16,000 new IRS agents that have been implemented under Obamacare? 16,000. Now, tell me why in a health care bill you need 16,000 new IRS agents. And obviously that is to make sure that when they go into your personal bank accounts, that you are not, lying or altering what it should be to be able to squeeze another dollar or tax out of you. This system sets up a national ID that will be a manner of information for your family and track you no matter where you live or where you travel in order to be involved in medical insurance coverage. And remember, you will be mandated now on this whole bill, this whole law, ordered by the federal government, or you will be fined, subject to prison sentences, subject to higher taxes, so on and so forth. Further eroding the doctor-patient relationship. The various agencies will review and ultimately determine what diagnostic expenditures are necessary, what treatment afforded, and what drugs are available, and then used, even what doctor to see. In other words, the government will determine your treatment. If anything goes wrong, the politicians will blame it on everyone but the government. At first, we'll notice it very slowly. It'll creep in gradually to the full implementation of the bill and the law in 2014. And you probably won't notice a lot of differences because the law is slow to be implemented on two reasons. As I said, 2014 is the finalization. And the second is it's going to take a lot of work for even the bureaucrats to think how they can change this to implement it for more government mandates. It's a huge operation. Full implementation of the law will slowly take time, and this time will serve those who want total socialized European, Canadian-style health care and medicine. It will be similar to placing, anybody heard of the bullfrog theory about socialism? You put a frog in tepid water. He's a reptile. He's a cold-blooded reptile that adapts to his environment. You put him in tepid water and slowly increasing the temperature, he stays there till he boils. That's what socialism is. Ronald Reagan said that the socialist dance is one step forward and two steps backwards. One step to the right, two steps to the left. The frog will not notice the rise until it's too late to take action and leap out. Medicine under Obamacare will see slowly increasing regulations until we're all cooked. The third thing, the current law is incomplete and will take other legislation to fully implement a completely socialized system. While some may argue that Obamacare is not necessarily socialism and will not lead to socialism, we have to interject another problem that people have when they're reading the new laws that will have an impact on our lives. Most people have problems projecting the lines exponentially to understand the plot of a movie or a play to see what it's really like. And they understand that there's something going on, there's something that they can't put their finger on. But we know most people have a problem doing this in their own lives. You know, you can tell your children, like our parents told us, don't touch the hot stove, don't do this. But until you experience yourself, sometimes you don't know. And unfortunately, in our society, with hedonism rampant, and Lennon said, you know, they can get more people out to a ball game on Sunday than they can to church. So what happens is now we see people even more confused in this society, and a rampant divorce even contribute to more problems. It is the same with the laws. People can be told over and over again what's going to happen, but they do not really want to believe what is going on right in front of their eyes. Let us quote an expert on socialism and see how what we're talking about fits into this plan. Of course, we're talking about Karl Marx. Karl Marx, in his famous Communist Manifesto, Marx outlined the steps it would take to make over any society in a totally socialistic state. He preceded these steps with these words. In the beginning, this cannot be effected except by means of despotic inroads, by means of measures, therefore, which appear economically insufficient and untenable, but which in the course of the movement outstrip themselves and necessitate further inroads upon the old social order, and are unfavorable as a means of entirely revolutionizing the mode of production. Now, you might believe that Marx was simply talking about production, but let's look at the key words here. Despotic inroads. Necessitate further inroads upon the old social order, which had little to do with the mode of production. Let's see what's happening right here and now. A problem is identified by the government, and then they offer a solution for the problem, and then the government solution makes the problem necessitating another government-sponsored solution to fix the one that they began with at the beginning, and in the end, the government ends up running everything that has to do with the original problem. The solution is to go back to square one, or in the end, the government ends up in control, and the people and the individuals have no control over their lives. It means to us simply more taxes, less choices. You'll have less ability to make decisions for you and your family. Your decisions will be made for you by the government officials. Obamacare is the old social order inroad. Now we see a little bit of the picture being a little more clear as the fog lifts. It turns the historic idea of medical care on its ear. It starts the process of changing medicine from being a private concern to a government concern. It will necessitate further inroads on the old social order until medicine becomes not only a government concern, but a total government operation. Now, all of this may seem a bit far-fetched, as I said earlier about Alice in Wonderland and the giant insane asylum. But, you know, Marx lived in the 19th century. I'll give him the credit that he was around 1850 when he was writing or ghost-writing the Communist Manifesto. And we live in the 21st century. Let's look at some of the characters that are growing up in the 20th century, the politicians that were born and educated in the 20th century. Here's a cover from a new program of the Communist Party USA in draft in 1966. After publication, it was adopted at the next Communist Party convention. And one of the planks, let's look at this more carefully, calls for complete cradle-to-grave social insurance. Surprise, surprise. Cradle-to-grave social insurance, including all of the medical care. 1966. The communists have been working behind the scenes for decades to bring about ever since. It's not just altruistic reasons, but to establish government control over the medical field. Let us examine what may be in Obamacare which satisfies the advocacy of the cradle-to-grave medical care. let's explore the word grave portion of the statement first. In section 1553 of the Obamacare law, it says prohibition against discrimination on assisted suicide. It says, basically, in this publication here of the law, you can see that it's very hard to read on purpose. So let's boil it down to where we understand what's really being said. We'll redact a few things. Aha! Ladies and gentlemen, the fog starts to lift. Why would a law say that you cannot discriminate based on the fact that a medical provider does not provide abortion, assisted suicide, and basically euthanasia by withholding nutrition or hydration? In other words, it says here, they're implying that such services will receive federal assistance. It is written in such a manner as to be confusing until you look at it long enough and drop the extraneous language. And then you just can't believe that is what is really is being said. It's just too much to believe that our government would be that immoral and unethical. It just can't happen in America. It just can't happen, in Oklahoma or Texas. It can't mean that, but ladies and gentlemen, it does. It says what it says. If it doesn't mean that, then why even mention it? And why not simply say that the law will not fund abortion, assisted suicide, and euthanasia? But it does not. Some of the pro-life congressmen were duped, bought off, whatever, to pass the law. By the way, it only passed by 5 votes in the House of Representatives. So if you know a congressman in Texas that voted for it, he needs to be sent home. We're concerned about this, that the pro-lifer congressmen were duped and bought off by taking out with an executive order the funding of abortion to get the bill passed. Obama promised to sign an executive order stating the law would not fund abortion, and this he did. Here's the executive order. But again, we see this, ladies and gentlemen. He did not mention assisted suicide and euthanasia nowhere in the executive order. Also, simply because the president signs an executive order does not actually make it a law, even if it is enforced as one. Only Congress can enact legislation, not the president, and he can sign another executive order to reverse that one, change a previous one at any time he wishes without fanfare. Now let's look at some countries that have euthanasia. Modern nations in Europe who have health care laws that use euthanasia, such as the Netherlands, Germany, and Belgium. And then further on in Canada and England, while officially they do not use the term euthanasia, they officially call it rationing of health care for the elderly based on a point system. We have seen Obama administration officials laud this system, switching now to the other end of Karl Marx's spectrum, the cradle. We see much in this regard to Obamacare. In the health care law under improvements and outcomes for individual families, the government will institute local studies and experiments to be implemented into national strategy all across the country. As we go through the list of these new improvements of what the federal government wants, while they might sound good superficially, they're rotten to the core with the intrusion of us and our individual families. That's all of us, our families, our children, by the government. Now, these improvements are a list of many things that maybe are health related and maybe are not. But let's see what they intend to do with those. The improvements listed are prenatal, maternal, and newborn health, child health and development, child cognitive language, socioeconomic, emotional, physical development, parenting skills, school readiness, child academic achievement, reduction in crime, reduction in domestic violence, improvements in family, economic self-sufficiency, stress, both in the family and on the job, and more and more and more. Do we have any homeschoolers, or anybody that has any homeschoolers in their family? We homeschooled 3.